everybody, my name is Charlie and welcome back to the show. Today we're going to be talking about double vertical strokes with the Stevens grip, both beginning and advanced stuff. But first I wanted to give a little shout out to Chris Brophy for winning our Twitter contest and winning an awesome pair of NJZ1 mallets. I love these mallets. Dude, you are going to love these mallets. They have such like a beefy and articulate sound. Like if you compare these with, I don't know, some Encore mallets. Here's the Encores. Mixolydian mode today, apparently. Compare these with the NJZ1s. Totally awesome. Really cool mallets. So thanks for playing, everybody. Thanks for tweeting and retweeting and doing all that stuff. There will be more contests in the future because I think I still have another spare pair of mallets around that I haven't used at all. So maybe a composition contest would be a really cool way to get that out there. Okay, let's get started with a little bit of basic mechanics and philosophy. First of all, a lot of books start out with double vertical strokes first, but as I said in my previous episode, I think that's kind of setting you up for failure because anytime I start somebody out on double verticals first, they like clench down on the mallets and their fingers aren't really strong enough to support them, and they end up just hammering them and their knuckles turn white, and it's really just not a good situation. So I would spend a good 3 weeks, maybe even 4 weeks, on getting a nice good single independent stroke going on. And that way these muscles will be strong enough so when you want to do double verticals, they can handle the load and not clench. Because our tendency is when we're tired, we actually tense up more. And it's not a good situation. And number two, I would use mallets that are nice and light. The IP Soloist series are pretty light. The Stevens LS15s, the regular kind are pretty light, but they also have an LS15L, which are even lighter than the normal ones. And those are probably the best ones to just start out. If you've never played before and your fingers aren't quite developed yet, those are really great mallets to start out with because they're so easy to play with. You can play for just maybe twice as long as you can with these before you get tired. So that's something to consider. Now, when you're first starting out, you should primarily focus on the interval of a fifth, the interval of a third, and an octave. And a lot of people wait to do octaves until like much later in life, and then they have a lot of trouble with them. But I would go ahead and start with all three. When one position gets kind of tiring, shake it out, do the other hand, then come back to a new position, shake it out, do the other hand, come back to a new position. That'll kind of well round your technique a lot, so you don't get really good at fifths and then have an octave in a piece and then you can't do it. So in the Stevens book, it recommends just taking one of these intervals and moving it up and down chromatically, although I like to do it diatonically because I get to work on some scales and it's a little bit easier when you're starting out, especially with thirds because they're kind of difficult to play. So a good Stevens exercise would look something like this. And so on, you get the idea. And then moving on to a third, I would keep it in C major at first and just get the feel of a third in your hand. And then of course, going to an octave as well. Now when you go to the octave, make sure you keep that mallet under the middle finger. Don't do those cheating octaves that we talked about 2 episodes ago, but keep the mallet underneath that middle finger and practice using just the wrist and avoid getting the arm too much into the stroke at this point. It should look something like this. So if you notice here, we're not doing anything too complicated because we want to primarily focus on staying relaxed and using a nice, good, solid piston strokes. So the mallets start in the up position, they flick down and come back up at the same speed that they went down. All right, now once you get the basics down, the good intermediate level of these things is to do interval changes while you're doing it. And if you pick up Gift's book Simply 4, it has a lot of these just kind of crawling exercises where your mallets are slowly opening and closing. So one of his exercises would look very similar to this. So you're focusing still on being relaxed, focusing still on doing the piston stroke, but now you have to focus on moving this interval and continuing to stay relaxed and do all of those things. Now as you get faster and faster, you'll notice that you'll have to change your interval on the way up, which is a really tricky concept at first. So if you're going from, say, an octave to a fourth and back, in slow motion you would go down for the octave, and then on the way back up, it would go to the fourth, and then you go down with the fourth. Now as you get more advanced with that, you could take a look at that exercise PM that I posted 2 episodes ago, and it focuses on every possible interval you can do with your hands. And that one looks something like this. Another good exercise to really make you angry is practicing doing scales, but with octaves. For example, if you were going to do a normal scale with your inner mallets, it would look something like this. But the idea here is that you go to an octave and your inner mallets do the same thing, but you're playing the scale and your outer mallets are just trying to hit the right zones. It's so difficult to do, especially as you speed up. I'm a little rusty, so I'm not going to take it so fast, but it should look something like this. All right, now on to the advanced stuff, the moment you've all been waiting for. The first big hurdle that everybody comes into with double vertical strokes is the first time they try to play that one Stevens exercise where you're going up with the chord inversions. Pretty easy in C major, and then they go to do it in something like E and totally lose all sound quality. And it looks something like this, the wrong way. So the issue here is that a lot of us, when we start out these things, we just keep it in our mind that the thumb stays up all the time, and we do all these octave exercises and all these moving around exercises, and we try to keep that thumb up all the time. But when you need to turn your hand over with the elbow out, or when you need to spread your hands, you can't really keep that thumb completely vertical. In fact, in this E major, I think it's the first inversion right here, if you try to keep your thumb up, your mouths are going to be at this horrendous angle to the keyboard. So here, we use this technique where you pull up with the index finger and then you turn the hand over. So your hand is almost completely flat, kind of like you were snare drumming. So once again, it's pulling up the finger and then turning over. And this allows you to keep those shafts closer to the keyboard and get a much more full and beefy sound. So that would look something like this. So if you're having trouble with this, and this is how you're trying to approach these chords, just try to place your mallets here and then slowly rotate your hands down so that they're closer to the keyboard. And it might be really weird feeling at first because there's kind of this big arc in your hands, but your sound quality just doubles. I mean, your volume opens up so much more when those shafts are closer to the keyboard and not way up here. Another good way to learn this is to play a fifth with the C and the G, and then go up to F and C, and then go up to the next C and the next G. So what you're going to find is in the first one, your thumb is up like normal, and the second one, it's about halfway turned over, and then the last one, your hand is totally turned over. And that would look something like this. Whereas perhaps before, you would approach something like that, like this. With the thumb up, but now you have this sharp angle here. So just turn in the wrist just a little bit, bring up the finger, and then it should sound more like this instead of this. Now, if you've been doing this for a while, you'll notice when you try to start doing this exercise, you'll start kind of leaning without knowing it, thus eliminating the purpose of moving out of your body in the first place. So what you can do if you see yourself start doing that, you can kind of ground yourself by keeping the left mallets on C and G, and then that kind of forces you to flatten out your hands as you spread wider because you can't really do it otherwise. And that would look something like this. I know this is going to be incredibly awkward and very strange for some of you, especially if you've been doing the thumb up thing for a very long time, but it's going to help your playing out so much, and your sound quality and your consistency is going to start rising dramatically as you get the hang of this technique. This is especially obvious when you're doing that Stevens exercise where your mallets are going up the major chord and then the outer mallet is going down, the one that looks like this. When people start doing this chromatically and they get to something like, I don't know, well, the D flat version, the first thing they do is they hit the octave and then they bring their elbow up and then they have an incredibly weak next hit and then they bring it back down. So this is going to be that situation where we pull up the index finger to flatten our hand and get a nice beefy sound quality. Or say, for example, if you're doing D major. On the way up and down with the inner mallet is fine. But then when they go down, the first hit's normal, the second hit's normal, and then the next one, they shoot their elbow up and have an incredibly weak quality of sound here. And thirds are a little bit more difficult. You have to be more precise, but you can still get that index finger up and get the hand down to the keyboard. All right, everybody, the last exercise for today is an adaptation of an old Crossman exercise that we used to play. I've kind of adapted it for 4 mallets, and I love playing this exercise when I first step up to the marimba. Every time I warm up, this is the first thing that I play, and it really gets your hands nice and stretched, and it's not meant to be played super fast, but it's meant to get a nice, good, relaxed stretch, get the muscles moving in your hands, and it sounds really cool. I don't really have a name for it, so if you come up with a really cool name, please email me and I can throw it on the sheet music and put it on the website. So here is unnamed warm-up piece number 43. That's it for today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please stop by marimbology.com. I've been receiving tons of really awesome comments and emails and suggestions. Please keep throwing them at me. I know I haven't been doing a whole lot in the last 5 months since I got this really sweet new job, but now the marching band's over and my concert's over, I have a lot more time to do stuff like this. Speaking of which, I know it's not Christmas anymore, but please check out the video of my group playing Carol the Bells with percussion ensemble and iPads, where iPads like duel back and forth and do some craziness. I'll try to post some sort of annotation over here for you YouTube people. So check that out. It's really sweet. Send me your ideas and thoughts. And also, as part of this new certification that I'm getting for school, I have to collaborate with somebody who's outside of the country. So I would love to set up some sort of Skype thing between my students and your students, or do some sort of crazy internet collaboration thing. So if you are interested in that, please send me an email, marimbology@gmail.com. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time.